Hey, it's Alan here.
And Bree. And we are the hunter and the hippie.
Connected through yoga and bonded by our love of the wild places and the love for outdoors, we've come together to share our conversations about life.
Well, maybe more so what we've learned or are continuing to learn about life.
And there's no one way to do it. Life, that is.
And hopefully provide you with some teeny tiny bits of inspiration to connect deeper with yourself, others, and our great Mother Earth.
All right. Enough already about the podcast. Let's just get to the podcast. Here we are. How's it going, Bray?
It's going. I feel like the last few times I'm in a weird state.
Why is that?
Maybe not. I'm not overwhelmed, but just in a busy time still, and which people are like, it's always busy for me. I pride myself on not being busy. I hate the word busy.
I think busy. It's funny. I feel like we're martyrs. In the sense of like that word busy. I hate that word busy. I don't even know where we're going with this, but it really has turned our society into this like busy society. And in my mind, busy is such bullshit. Like you dedicate your time, and you brought this up, right? Your brother brought this up in a comment to you on last episode.
Yeah.
But, right, like wherever you see value, that's where your time's going to go. Right. So like busy is this martyrness of life that we've like came up with of, oh yeah, no, I'm busy. And like, we've like made ourselves these martyrs of like, oh yeah, I don't have time for my kids. It's like, well, no, like you prioritize. And what did your brother say to you when you were going through the corporate changes? And,
when I was still in corporate, yeah, he was like, he's like, family is just not a priority.
Right. And it hurts, right, for you, like it's personal, but at the same time, it's like, that's what you prioritized.
Yeah. And
busy, like, yeah, we are all busy. But if something like truly was important to you, you're going to make time for that thing. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
No, it's fine. I mean, I hate that word because it's like it reminds me of the old life of like, and even just living in New York of. People like prided themselves on being busy, and I am at a stage in my life where I pride myself on not being busy. And I pretty much just put myself in this quote unquote busy situation because I put off my taxes and there is an actual deadline for that.
You know, the deadline's extended, right?
I know, but if I tell myself it's extended, then I'll do the same thing in a month. So I'm just getting it done. I wanted to finish it last week, and I didn't. And the reason I didn't was because I realized another thing I put off, which in the fall I was looking at hunter education so that I can put in for tags this year. And I didn't do it in the fall. And so my good friend was like, hey, just so you know, I was looking at the Hunter Ed website and you need to get on that because the one in Cody was actually 2 weekends ago. And I was volunteering at a race, which was awesome. I mean, I committed to that and wouldn't have traded it in. That is something that's important to me, is like staying with the run community and which anyone looking for a really cool destination race, check out Run Cody, Wyoming's races. They have some really cool trail races, a really cool half marathon, and then they just started doing a gravel bike race called Fistful of Dirt. And it's just super, like, this is another reason I'm like daily in awe of where I live is there's such cool terrain. There's this like slick rock area that this race was at, and I was cleaning up the backside of it, and I'm like, this is so cool. Anyway, all that
That's
to say, my friend who was also volunteering in the race, she's like, I had time to look up Hunter's Ed, and you missed the one this weekend in Cody. And again, another nice, like, love my friends who are just like super blunt and straight up. I looked at them, and originally this last Saturday, our run crew, we occasionally run with a youth rehab center. It's residential rehab for, I think they're all under 18 in Powell. And so we were supposed to run with the kids because they got into running. And so that ended up getting canceled. So back up. She was really straight up with me because I said, I can't make any of the other Hunter Eds. And they only show it 30 days out. And she's like, well, do you want to hunt this year or not? I was like, whoa, okay.
That's awesome.
She's like, you're going to have to drive. Like, you're going to have to go. Like, I was looking at maybe I'd go do it in Casper, which is 3 hours away. Or, you know, all that to say, I ended up putting myself on the wait list. Thursday, I got off, but I had not done the online portion yet. And you have to complete the online portion before the field day.
Yep.
So I pretty much had Friday to do the online portion before the field day on Saturday.
Yep.
And everyone tells you it's just a couple hours. And when they say a couple hours, it's like a whole day. It was like 8 hours. It was probably 8 hours of my day to complete it.
There's a lot of information.
Oh, it's so much. And so my whole plan to finish my taxes last week just went out the door. But
out the window.
I did make sacrifices in my priorities, and I was going to go ski up. The resort is closed up in Red Lodge, and I was going to go up and do that, and was like, no, I want to hunt. I need to get this done first. I want to get my taxes done. Like, it's grind time, and typically I'm really balanced, quote unquote, whatever that looks like for you. But yeah, the last couple of weeks have it's been a lot of very time sensitive projects, which is not always the norm for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. That's.
And what did you think of Hunter Ed?
Oh, it was awesome. Yeah, it was. There's so much. I mean, it's kind of crazy how technical they get into, like, a lot of technical aspects of firearms. I mean, if you want to learn, I was like, the firearm portion of it should be required for everyone. I think that's a big missing point in our society, is that, again, we've talked about this, like, condemning something that we don't understand. Yep. And I look at this, there's kids, I mean, in a state or in a culture that has guns and hunting as part of the lifestyle, people are educated about it at a very young age. And I think, like, I grew up in Southern California, so I didn't really know anything about guns. And I think that is why there are so many people who they don't understand it, so they take a stance without understanding it. And
100%.
yeah, it was. I mean, I took it very seriously in terms of like just learning about everything.
That's great
on there, but
that's awesome. Colin Noir. Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
He for those that don't know, Colin Noir, he's an attorney down in Texas, huge Second Amendment advocate, and yeah, he's just all around great advocate for the Second Amendment. But he was just on another episode of Joe Rogan that was just released, and he talked exactly about that. Right, talked about how our first response, society's first response is ban guns, but the problem is we're not educated about guns. And there's over 400 million guns in this country, which is more than people. And they're not going anywhere, right? You can talk about banning guns all you want, and it's not going to happen. And his thing is, and I'm a huge proponent, is education, right? Like, why aren't we teaching, right? If there's that many guns in this world, and you are that concerned about it, why aren't we teaching about it? Why aren't we having the conversation to say, hey, these are guns. These are, what they're used for. They are, they're not toys. And really just having the conversation versus just condemning.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned, I know we talked about this, and I don't know if I mentioned in an episode, but I was at someone's, like a friend of a friend's house who had a little kid, and like my friends were lifting weights in the basement. So I was like hanging out with a kid, and we like went downstairs, and the kid just like toy finger, like not even like an actual toy gun, but with his fingers like was like pow, like kind of shooting at me. And his dad immediately goes, no, we don't point guns at humans.
Yep.
Like, we don't point guns at people. And so that's like, and it wasn't even like a toy gun. It was like his finger, like just the little finger gun,
Doesn't matter.
And that is, this is where they exist. And if we just pretend like they don't, or we don't talk about it, or like, what if we banned everything we didn't understand? Where would we be? But that's what happens with like the divisiveness we always talk about, is like, if it's on my side and my quote unquote political side or belief system, like anything that's not in agreement with that, I want to ban, versus why don't I get curious and try to understand it?
Right. And the key thing there is, right, like, who doesn't understand it? Right? Because people understand guns. Some people don't. And a great example I use this often is, I don't understand rocket science. Right? To your point, should we ban it? Or, right, like, rocket science still exists, even though I don't comprehend it. Right? We still have weaponry based off rocket science. We still go to space based off rocket science. Right? And if I convinced enough people who didn't know anything about rocket science to ban it, right? Like, should that actually happen? That's, it's ridiculous versus educating. And yeah, you're right. Like, when I was growing up, so I grew up in New York City. I've mentioned this before, where guns are bad, and the only people that have guns are criminals or police officers. My uncle was a police officer. He's retired NYPD. And he was a narcotics detective. And he would come home, and this is way back in the day, right? He had a revolver, and he would open a drawer in the kitchen. He would come home, he would take his gun off, put it in the drawer, and shut the drawer. And now, I don't necessarily agree with this method, but there were times we would go in that drawer as kids for something else in that drawer. We would move the gun aside and go for whatever, was in that drawer that we needed. But we knew not to touch, right? We knew what the gun was, and we knew not to touch it. And we knew, like, we had bigger problems if we touched that gun. And it was in the education. And to your point, right, of like the finger guns, the pew pew, right? I think that's a great start of having, right, like, knowledge of, hey, we don't point guns at people. And because kids don't understand real versus fake. And my friend right now is actually getting first-time gun owner, and he's never had a gun. He has 2 kids. It's really funny because he's never wanted guns around his kids. And now, after 2020, after the Boulder shooting, he bought 2 guns, one for him and one for his wife. And he's asking me all sorts of questions about, how do I teach my 5-year-old about this? And, and what about, how do you differentiate toy guns? And when I was growing up, like, I was never allowed to have a Nerf gun, like one of those Nerf guns to like shoot other people with, because you're not supposed to shoot people. And so, while Nerf guns are fun, right, it's like it's this double-edged sword of, how do you actually teach children, right? The difference between a toy, what's real, what's fake. And then the other thing is that if you, there's laws that if you were to pull a toy gun out like it was a real gun, that is considered a real gun and you will face criminal charges. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you're packing a toy gun, and you try to like pull it out or like brandish it, right? Brandishing is a felony. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter toy or not, right? It is treated like it is a real thing. And we see, it happen. People get shot by police officers, right? They have a toy gun and now like there's all these regulations with toy guns. The barrels are supposed to be painted orange, but to identify they're a toy. But yeah, it's.
Well, what could it stop someone who wants to do something malicious? Could then, if they know that, they could just paint their
barrel orange.
Yeah.
Or paint the orange black. Mm-hmm. To make it look like a real gun. Like, it's laws, right? Laws don't work. Mm-hmm. Right? The bad guys who want guns are going to get their guns and they're going to use their guns and they're going to, make an impact on a negative way. But it's important that we teach the children. It doesn't matter what, right? Because that's how accidents happen, mm-hmm. right? Like maybe you think a toy, maybe you think the gun is a toy gun, but it's not, and you point it at your friend. And yeah, there's it's important that we are having the conversations that these. I had a friend once say, oh, they're try to tell their kid, oh, it's a toy for adults. No. Mm-mm. Well, yes, there's fun and there's recreation in, firearms. They're never toys.
No.
And, we just have to continue to have that conversation. And I feel obligated as a gun owner and, former veteran, like to help my friends. And, I post on social media all the time, like, hey, you have questions, like, it can be a scary world out there, right? And especially if you're listening to the media and you see these events that happen, the Boulder shooting being one of the most recent ones, that makes you start to think about, one, your mortality, but also the safety and protection of your family. Mm-hmm. And this is right, like a prime example. Like people start reaching out to me, like maybe you've never had a gun before. 2020, I had friends reach out to me. 40% of gun sales increased 40%. Mm-hmm. With
new first time.
a big portion of them being first time gun owners. Mm-hmm. And again, we don't track firearm sales because that would be illegal and against the Second Amendment. But what we do track is background checks. And so what they go off of is how many new background checks were there in the system. So based off of, I think it was like 20 million new background checks were done, or 20 million background checks were done. And of that, like 8 million were new first-time background checks. And those are, it can be scary in the sense that, these people might not have the resources or understand to go get the training or take this hunter ed. Right, we call it hunter ed. But you learned about like firearms.
Yeah, it was predominantly.
Right. So maybe these people who are purchasing a firearm for self-defense, they're thinking, I don't need hunter ed. I'm not going to be a hunter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
the reason for the field day is actually predominantly firearm handling safety. Mm-hmm. And so even though they do go over a few of, they readdress ethics, sportsmanship, and then some Wyoming specific laws, not a ton. I mean, that was on all the online course, But the
Mm-hmm.
thing that you can't measure online is safely handling a firearm. And
Absolutely.
so the 4 hours is, I would say, probably 2.5 of those hours, maybe even 3, was going over different firearms, 5 different firearms, how to safely pass them off, like hand them to someone, how to handle
Mm-hmm.
them yourself, load, unload, going through over a fence, carries, like all the
Mm-hmm.
different things. And you can't pass without, so the other part, you do a 50 question exam, which also includes firearm safety in there,
Mm-hmm.
and along with more hunter specific information. But then you also have to pass a firearm handling test.
Which is fantastic.
So and that's where even the whole, like, what I think is really cool about it overall, not just beyond the firearm like safety handling, is the ethics part of hunting, which we've
Mm-hmm.
addressed. But I think people don't realize how much hunters do care. That there are laws, but even within like those legalities, there's different levels of ethics from person to person.
Absolutely.
And yeah, they're like, just because he takes only the quarters and then this person takes more meat, like, that's ethics. Each person has their own ethics. They're both
Mm-hmm.
legal, and yeah, I just think it's something also for people to want to. It's so cheap. Like, if you
Yep.
like have a problem with hunting, go take a hunter ed. Like, spend $20 to take
Yeah.
hunter ed and understand the whole what goes into it. um but yeah, so
And it's interesting, right? Like I want to just touch on my experiences in hunter ed as well, and in the military. So first off, I just took a hunter ed recently to get my orange card. So I had a waiver from being in the military. So some states offer waivers for hunting, but you have to like show and renew every year, which is can be a pain in the butt. And so I did a hunter ed recently, but I also did a hunter ed way back in the day with my friend and his dad, who introduced me to firearms when I was 14, 15 years old. And I remember learning quite a bit from that. Uh, but this last hunter ed that I took, and then the hunter ed that I think people are taking right now, I feel like there's definitely they're missing something. So the hunter ed I took, there was a portion online similar to what you did,
mm-hmm.
right? And there's a lot to learn from that. Um, and I again, right, like I think I assume that people know more than they actually do about it because I've been there. And so like when I did the hunter ed online, it was just like, oh yeah, I know this already stuff. And then I had to go do this, in person portion, and sadly I didn't have a great experience with that.
Mm-hmm.
It was these three old men, retired old guys who, hunting is their passion and they want to share it with other people, which is great. But really, it was just 3 hours, or not 3 hours. I forget how many hours, but it was a long time of them just sharing their stories of hunting and just random stories. And really, like, I didn't get the what you're saying from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you're talking about handing off firearms, making sure that the bolt's back and it's clear, and then you hand it off, with it visible to the other person, right? Like that wasn't in my hunter ed. And I feel like in some ways that it's just a bureaucratic way for companies to make some money and the state to charge some fees. So I wish that we would do a better job of finding out who's doing the instruction. I submitted feedback, but right now with coronavirus, there is no in-person portion in Colorado.
Which is
So
questionable. Like, I think is incredibly questionable if firearm safety is one of the main, like, firearm handling is one of the main parts of it. Because, yeah,
yeah.
I mean, like, the online, I had quizzes after each module, 11 modules, but it's open book, like, it's open book, right? So I
Hmm.
don't really have to retain that information.
Yep.
And ours is actually put on by Wyoming Game and Fish.
Hmm.
So one of the actually, this is a really cool story. The game warden for Cody and another game warden in Grable, and then another woman who works for Wyoming Game and Fish
Hmm.
were doing it. But the game warden from Cody, I actually hitchhiked with 2 summers ago.
That's
When
awesome.
I got
Did you
out
know
of
that going in?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
When I got out of off the Wind River High Route, which is 100-mile backpacking from just outside of Lander to just outside of DuBois, and
Hmm.
it's the high route, so you're like going over like a pass or 2 or 3 a day. Um, but when you get out, you still have 8 more miles to the highway. So you get to the trailhead, finishing. I went north, so getting out near DuBois, and the guy who created the route was like, make friends with people as you're exiting, so you can hitchhike to the highway, and it's just like a lot easier to then get to back to Lander that way. And I was finishing. It was like 9, a little after 9 p.m. because I was like, I'm finishing today. Like, I'm so done. I was so maxed out. And I saw these headlamps coming down another trail. So I
Hmm.
waited at the trailhead, and a group came, and I started talking to this gentleman, and I was like, "Are you guys going to the highway?" Like, "Oh, we're not going tonight. We're like heading out there tomorrow." So yeah, we can give you a ride. Like, we'll be back here, pick you up at 6 a.m. And the guy, Jordan Winter, was he like Wyoming Game and Fish have some cabins near that trailhead,
Hmm.
and they were doing like an organizational retreat type thing, and so he gave me a ride, and that was another person who put Cody on my radar, which is really funny. But we chatted a bunch, and he shared his story, and we talked about hunting, and that at the time I think the grizzly tags had just been taken back, or I can't remember what specifically. And I like kind of asked him about that, and but he had given me his card, and we kind of chatted a little bit afterwards, and then I forgot to tell him that I moved to Cody, and then I saw his name on the Hunter Ed, and I was like, oh my gosh.
That's such a
I
cool
told him,
story.
I'm in your class tomorrow.
That's great.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that's what's really, they take ownership over leading that, because they're the one that's going to be out there interacting with you in the
Hmm.
field if it comes to that. And,
Yep.
he's had like situations, he's had guns pulled on it, like
Hmm.
there's more of an investment in teaching it, I think, when it comes down to like Game and Fish leading it, also from a
Yep.
wildlife conservation perspective too, and
Hmm.
so yeah.
Yeah, these old men actually gave me misinformation about animal population. I forget exactly what it was, and so yeah, like I agree. Like why are we having people who, yeah, I get it, it's a passion, but someone who has a skin in the game, and
Mm-hmm.
then you get to see how it is interacting with the game wardens, right? Because when you're out there hunting, when we hunted Wyoming for antelope, we had a stop
Mm-hmm.
where we had to get out and we had to go through all of our meat. So we had 4 antelope, and we had to pull out every quarter, back straps, tenderloins, go through tags, verification, sex verification, um, and all of that is also knowing that they have guns, and right, are we poachers, or right, what's going to happen. So I think setting that interaction, first off, that these people are human, but like helping having them help people understand what's going on out there. I agree with you on that. And that's so cool that you hitchhiked with.
I know.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, love it. Small world.
It really is. So, what are we, like 30 minutes in already? More than that? We haven't even took a breath yet.
Yeah. All right.
Shall we move?
Yeah, let's
move
take a breath.
Move to breathing.
I need it today.
I'm gonna get out of my chair real quick while you start our breathing exercise.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So when you're ready, closing your eyes or finding a soft gaze. And let's start with 3 deep inhales through the nose and big open mouth exhales together. Just letting go of anything you're holding on to, anything that's lingering from earlier, kind of on your mind for the future. So take a deep inhale. And as you exhale, letting go. And again, taking in and giving back. One last time, breathing in and letting go of all holding. And with every progressive, natural exhale, see if you can let go even more. Just begin to feel relaxation pouring over your body. Softening all the muscles in your face. Letting go of tensions through the neck and shoulders. Let the arms go limp. Feeling your exhale melt over your shoulder blades, chest. Your entire torso softening. Releasing any clenching through the buttocks or hips. Letting both legs relax completely. And then come back to the feeling of your whole body completely relaxed. Letting go of all holding anywhere. And then when you feel ready, staying in this relaxed state, you can gently flutter your eyes open. I needed that today.
I needed that as well. That was beautiful. Thank you. Does it help you when you're leading it?
Yeah, because anytime I lead anything, I'm experiencing it with.
Got it.
I'm like guiding. I'm not guy. This is super hippie, but it's like a transmission, right? And so,
Yep.
I need to be experiencing it as I'm sharing it, and if I'm not, that's gonna be felt. So, and more so, and especially getting into kind of with yoga nidras and anything I do with clients, it's if I'm not in it, I'm not transmitting that experience. So
I love it.
yeah.
So, what are your thoughts about today? I'll jump into what my thoughts are. So we were talking about what's our topic, and we were totally way off topic for how we started this episode. But
but busyness, right? Like that idea of, we went into hunting down that rabbit hole, but busyness feels in line.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Self-care. Is that what we were going to talk about?
Self-care. Yeah. Self-care. Sorry.
Yeah, busyness. How does what happens when you're
Right.
busy?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And taking the time to really take care of yourself. I think that's really important. And yeah, you're right. Right, with us bringing up the point of being busy, I think there's we've talked about this before with spring. Knowing your seasons, knowing you're in your seasons. I think that you have to also realize that there's a certain degree of busy, not being that martyr busy that I spoke of, but being busy to know what season you're in and how you're having to work to end up taking care of yourself, because the work that you do now is going to take care of yourself in the future, for certain things. So taking right to go hunting to be able to provide for yourself, you had to do this hunter safety course. So you're what is it, sowing,
Planting.
right, so you're so you're sowing, so you're planting in the spring, in effort to reap in the fall, when hunting season comes around, to be able to get you through winter, which fill the freezer, and hopefully you don't starve.
Well, and I think that that is when we talk about priorities too. When we tell ourselves we're busy, it's so important to look at how you change your priorities. And I think for a lot of people, self-care goes out the window when you're busy. It becomes less important than other things, and we don't think it's paying the bills, but it is. If you aren't, it's your health. If you're not healthy, you will not be able to pay the bills. You won't, whether that's because you have more bills or you're not able to work or whatever it might be. And how are you performing when you don't prioritize or make time, or you're too busy for self-care? And I get that question a lot with meditation stuff. And as you guys know from other episodes, or if you're just listening to this episode, I do a thing called yoga nidra, which they say at least 20 minutes. I like to do 30 to 45 if I can. And people are like, how do you get it in? And I'm like, well, at first it's discipline. And I think that's with any kind of self-care, right? At first it takes discipline to get that habit.
Yep.
But then, because I see the effect it has on my life, the discipline is no longer there. It's it's become a priority. It's become, I always look forward to it, but it's there's no question that I'll make the time for it.
It's an unnegotiable, right? It's going to happen.
And it's because right, when you feel what self-care does for you, and you live in a state where you're prioritizing that, you don't question whether that should be in your day or not.
Yeah, it's just right. It is just part of your day. It is right. It's the same as going to sleep. It's the same as waking up. Right, it is going to happen. Right, you are going to make time for yourself to perform, but also who's showing up. Right, that's the thing that I think of is when you're not taking care of yourself, who's showing up when it comes to your kids. Right, how are you showing up for your kids? How are you showing up for your friends, your family? For yourself, for your personal brand. It's so. To say that you don't have the time, I think I might have mentioned this in prior episodes, right? You need to take a real hard look at what your day consists of to say that you don't have the time. And I'm actually working on something right now for myself and to share with everyone, and I'll get to that. I actually have it next to me. I'll pull it up, but right, like you have to be right. People talk about motivation, and right, there's going to be times where you're not motivated, and that's where what you're saying, that discipline comes in, and you have to be disciplined in knowing that, hey, I'm going to do this for myself, for everyone. Mm-hmm. Right? You have to, you have to be selfish before you can be selfless.
Yeah, it's like that take and receive. I mean, right? You can't give if you're not receiving or taking.
Yep. And the key is you have to be consistent. Like you have to, right? I think a lot of people get bored in the monotony. Like this isn't sexy, right? Like this isn't, like maybe you can find different type of workouts or things like that to keep it, new, but really when you're working towards something, towards, a goal or trying to be consistent, we talked about this with our food and our diets, it's nothing crazy, right? It's very consistent. And, here, I'll pull it out real quick. So I'm creating this poster board. It's back to the beach.
Oh.
And yeah, so, it's a little ego driven, right? And, right. 'Cause when you look good, you feel good. And so, yeah, there's absolutely an ego part of it. And so we're actually going to, Lake McConaughey in Nebraska for Jessica's birthday/graduation.
Nice.
And, like I'm like, oh, I want a beach bod, right? And my first response to that is, right, like, how do you get a beach bod? Well, go to the beach and have a body, and right, like that's how you have a beach body. But really, right, like if you want to, right, you like, again, if you look good, you feel good, and it's just all about consistency. So I plan on sharing this. I wasn't going to, like, I've been back and forth. So it's just it's something really simple. It's just a 45 day, literally it's 45 days from yesterday till the day that we were going to the beach, to Lake McConaughey. And when you look at it, like I try making it fun, and right, there's 7 weeks, and it starts with just fucking start, right? Like it doesn't matter. I don't know how many times I have to say that, right? Like just fucking start, get started. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Doesn't matter what it sounds like, what it feels like. Just start going. 'Cause the more you sit on the couch and you just think about it, it's right. It's not going to happen. You actually have to take action for yourself. And then it just goes down, right? And eventually you start, right? You're fully committed to almost there, and then beach week. But really when I was designing this, my wife says to me, she's like, all the days are the same. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, why didn't you just make one list? Like one day and just one list of just what you need to do each day. And I was like, 'cause that doesn't hammer home the point, right? The point is consistency. The point is that you have to do these things every day, and right, you have to take care of yourself. And so, the way that I wrote it out is a bit different a little different than how I do it. So, for all those at home that aren't on camera, we'll share a picture of this, but, so each day it's workout for 30 plus minutes. And when I say like mine's a little different is I work out for at least an hour. But for those of you that are at home that aren't, doing much, or it's hard to, right, just get fucking started, just do 30 minutes. Read and journal for 15 minutes, meditate for 5+ minutes. Do one thing you enjoy, right? And that's not sitting on the couch, right? That's key, is like, do something you enjoy. Hanging out with friends, just get off the couch. Eat whole foods, 5 meals, 3 things for a gratitude list, progress photo, certain days, where accessible, there's jujitsu. But again, the point of this is to say, all right, look, if we were to do all these things, continue with your day, as normal. So we got workout. If you work out for 30 minutes, you read and journal, right, for 15 minutes. I don't care what the split is, right? Just read and journal. You can read for 14 minutes and journal for 1. You can journal for 14 and read for 1. Just do it. And meditate for 5+ minutes. So we're at, 30, 45, 55 minutes? We're at 55 minutes. That's it, right? Do one thing you enjoy. You're probably going to do that already, but it's most likely sitting on the couch. But instead, go do something you actually enjoy doing, right? Or call a friend, call a family member, right? Something you actually enjoy doing. Eat whole foods, right? 5 meals a day. You're already eating, right? You're just eating like
5
shit.
meals a day.
Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah,
I don't know about this.
All right. I love the challenge. Because Bree is going to say I fast for 16 hours.
Well, why 5?
So 5 is so a lot of people think that 5 is a lot. Some people don't. I focus on 5 meals a day because it's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 2 snacks in between. And it's all whole foods. So I don't care what it is. I don't care what your diet is. If you want to be vegan, vegetarian, I prefer you eat meat because red meat is going to give you minerals and nutrients that you don't get from other things without supplements. But the 5 meals a day is so that you're not gorging or you're not hungry. So the issue with a lot of foods is that, or with a lot of diets, is that you're so hungry that when it comes time to eat a meal, that you grab what's easily accessible, and usually that's processed, or usually it's sweets or sugar, because sugar, we crave sugar, right? We burn glucose, unless you're on a ketogenic diet, or you're fasting, right? So we burn glucose, so our body's saying we need sugar, and sugar is an easy, fast way to get glucose. But really carbs turn into glucose, which is then what we burn. So the 5 meals a day keep you satiated throughout the day, right? And it's not these massive meals. So it's really about just staying not full, right? Not that bloated feeling, right? It's about making sure that you're staying fueled for the day and getting your nutrients. So that's the 5 meals a day. But unless you're doing some other diet that works for you, for me, it's just eating whole foods. But if there's a diet that's working for you, and I don't even want to say a diet, if there's a lifestyle that's working for you, do that. Right. So Bree, your lifestyle is essentially the intermittent fasting, and that works for you. And I would say that's a lot harder for a lot of people to make that commitment.
Yeah.
And again, this is just the get the ass off the couch, right? Just fucking start.
The only reason I question that is because you talk a lot about training the mind, right? Mind. And so hunger, right? The idea of if you're always feeding, right? Multiple, if you're doing those 5 meals a day because you want to stay satiated, then are you going into states of discomfort? I think that's a great point. But and we've talked about this on different topics before. Is just get fucking started. Yeah. Don't worry about this getting started. Doing this is going to be uncomfortable already, and the point of is the point of this is you are going to eat, and unless you already have a diet or a lifestyle that works for you, you're going to eat. And right now I want you to make that conscious decision of what you're going to eat. Yeah. Right. So instead of grabbing the Doritos or the sugar laden foods, grab something whole. Grab whole foods, grab carrots, grab nuts, grab, cheese, grab meat and eat that. And you only have to do it for 45 days. Yeah. And the thing about it is and this kind of comes back, I think, a little bit to self-care. That starts at the grocery store. So if you don't buy, or like, and just in terms of setting yourself up for success, like, why did you write it out for every single one of those days versus one list? Because you're taking out you're lowering activation energy. You don't have to think about it. You get to look, okay, today is Tuesday. This is what I'm going to do. There's one less step in the process. And so when we're talking about this food stuff, like eat whole foods, well, how does that start? Why do you eat processed food? Because there's processed food in your house. So if you want to stop, if you want to eat whole foods, don't buy processed food.
Absolutely.
And then you expose yourself to like, am I desperate enough to, I want this Hostess donut. Am I willing to get in my car and go drive to the store to get it versus having just making do with what I have already?
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, and I think I'm not, I don't always intermittent fast either. Like it just doesn't always work for my days. But yeah, I've became fascinated with it because, fascinated, that because when we move from a 3 meals a day society to more meals a day, I think there's some research of like, there's some correlation between as, just like we used to, that was it. We had 3 meals a day. That's what we did. And I think there's different lifestyles back then. I think we were just naturally more active because of the kind of jobs that existed that weren't as much sitting on the couch. But they said a lot of that movement into like more obesity is because of this idea that got pushed of like snacking throughout, or like it's all like a ton of small meals throughout the day. Because what happened was, what you're different from what you're saying of like 3 meals and 2 snacks, right? Is like now all of a sudden people have 5 meals. Their snacks are not necessarily snacks.
Right. And for me, it is 5 meals.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I had breakfast, I had eggs and some toast, and then I had what did I have? Chicken and rice for lunch. And my snack in between, actually my snack in between today was a snack. So it was like a handful of nuts, mixed nuts. But there's days where I go full meals each day depending on my activity levels.
Yeah. What I found fascinating is that and this comes back to like, I think about hormones and our nervous system. And I don't know if I'm probably mentioned on that episode that we talked about training the mind, but every time we eat, our body the energy is getting put into digesting.
Yes.
And so like, as we're talking about, if I'm too busy for self-care, like my energy is being put into something other than self-care. Right. And so just kind of tying this back is like, it's just something to think about of like how you are allocating time, and what is it filling you up or is it draining you? And that was something we talked about addressing here. And sometimes there are things that you have to do that are draining you. And so for Alan, 5 meals a day. I'm just kidding.
But we also have to, think about how food, right? It could be draining energy, but it also is part of recovery. So especially if you're strength training, you have to fuel your muscles, right? If you're lifting weights, you're breaking your muscles down, and then to help them grow, you need to intake protein and branched chain amino acids and things like that to help them recover and heal, in addition to sleep. But right, so meals are important. While yes, it uses energy, right? It goes back to the priorities. Right? So what are your priorities, right? And are you strength training? Well, if you're strength training, then your diet has to match that.
Yeah.
right?
For
Whereas
you,
if,
for each, and that's each individual as well. Like
right,
individual needs are like considerably different, even within each kind of discipline of fitness.
absolutely. So I think it's taking a look and analyzing, okay, well, what's your priority? And then what are the priorities that go in line with that, in order to make sure you're taking care of yourself. But if you're just eating, right? Like if you're just being, uh, what's the word? You're not moving sedentary. Sorry. So you're being completely sedentary and then, right, like to eat 5 meals a day. Yeah, that's probably not going to work for you because now you're draining that energy. You're putting this energy into something that is not helping you recover because you didn't do anything to have to recover from. Right. So you have to get out there to work in order to, I look at food like, yeah, there's food that is good, right? And it tastes good, but food is purely for me a sense of like, it's a tool to help me recover. And that's how I see it is, okay, I need to eat this. Especially being smaller in stature. I've never been this super hungry person. And so even when I want to put on weight, like it's a task for me to have to eat. And yeah, so I think that, just making sure what you're doing aligns with your priorities and making sure that if you are sedentary, you're not eating 5 meals a day. You still should be eating whole foods. And I think that's the key to this is, holding yourself accountable to your point of you don't have to think about it, right? Everything's mapped out for the next 45 days. All I have to do is cross off what I've done. And it's really, really nice because as I do things, I cross it off. And for today, right, like it's really easy to just go up to it, when I do my morning routine and just boom, 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 and just cross off the things on the list. And then it also covers one of those things that we as humans have with like checklists. Some people say, oh, well, I don't need checklists. Well, checklists actually help because it makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. And so if you just have these consistent set of things that, again, right, what did I say? 55 minutes. If you can't find 55 minutes for yourself, you really need to evaluate what you have going on. I have friends who have, right, don't at me with the parent nonsense because I have friends who have a newborn and a toddler and they make time for themselves, right? Because they know, again, it's who they're showing up for, who they're showing up as for those kids when it comes time to show up if they don't take care of themselves.
It's funny. My friend recently, I think it's in Atomic Habits, which I haven't read, but I've listened to a lot of stuff and read some other articles by James Clear. But
Yep.
I might be wrong if this is not where it's from, but they say to break down your day in 8-hour increments. And so when you say only 55 minutes for these self-care things, well, we have 24. I know you're not good at math, so I'll take care of this part.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think we've tried this once before.
We have 24 hours in a day, right? So you have 8 hours that you're working, more or less, right?
Yep.
You have 8 hours for whatever else and 8 hours of sleep. Think about that. You have 8 hours that aren't assigned to sleep or work. So if you can't get 55 minutes in from back to the beach bod week, look at that.
And let's you know what? Let's give people the benefit of the doubt. So you work 8 hours. Let's say you have to go into an office. Let's give you an hour commute each way. All right, you still got 6 hours left. 55 minutes out of the 6 hours. How much time are you spending on social media? How much time are you spending on just looking at your phone, whether it not be social media or not? Right? Like our phones actually tell us our screen time now. Like pull it up, people.
I compete with myself weekly. Like if
to try to decrease that.
Yeah. And honestly, my one thing that is a disadvantage is playing like playlists for music, like for yoga and stuff like that counts as screen time. So I do go in and look at like, okay, what was actually just my music playing
Yeah.
versus like actually being on it. But you can put time limits on things. I put a time limit on Instagram, and that's my main source of social media and, for work and marketing. And I put a time
Right.
limit, and sometimes, yeah, I ignore it, but it keeps me conscious about how much
Mm-hmm.
time I'm throwing away.
Yeah. And how much time are you spending on Netflix? And everyone's so quick. We talk about this at work in my corporate job, like, oh, what's the Netflix show everyone's watching? But no one's talking. Like, why isn't anyone asking, like, hey, what's the new workout you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, why is it that we've socialized sitting on the couch and you know watching TV and being on social media. We even did what's your favorite social media app at work, right? And like Reddit, and there's a lot out there. But again, why are we not like, hey, what's your favorite workout? What's your favorite exercise? I was on another call today where someone was like, oh, I gained X amount of weight in the last year. And now I'm trying to get back to it. Well, in that last year where you gained X amount of weight, first off, that weight doesn't define you. But who have you been, and how have you been showing up in that last year, right? It's not about the weight. It's about the endorphins that you get from working out, right? The weight is a product of working out, possibly depending on your working out and stuff, but depending on your workouts. But what are you actually not able to like measure on a scale?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How are you showing up for your family, your friends, your children? How are you showing up for yourself?
And that
You
comes
know,
back to, honestly, stress. Just a lot of the research I've done and a lot of studying I do with my work is stress is a big leading cause of obesity, of weight gain, because when you're in a sympathetic response, you're in fight or flight, insulin
mm-hmm.
gets shot out to the limbs and your body produces more to replace it. But because you're not running and burning it off, it just gets stored. And so people don't realize, yes, like work out and eat, but if you're super stressed, you're going to hang on to that weight. And so that's where the self-care is important. Like, look at it from add that into if you are, since we are talking about weight, if you're trying to lose weight, build into your workouts like a relaxation, like 30 minutes of relaxing, whether it's in the bathtub or a hot tub, or it's a meditation or whatever it might be. Like, just build in something to relieve your stress. Because you said when you look good, you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually would say that I'm reverse in how I feel about that statement. Like, when I
Mm-hmm.
actually feel good, I look good. And when I gained a lot of weight living in my car, I didn't feel good. And then I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. And I was like, I don't look good. But I couldn't focus on what was like happening with how my clothing fit. I focused on what makes me feel good. What are the things that make me feel good? More movement, I eating healthier, making sure I'm doing my meditations, like getting out and having long days in the mountains. So I like focused on the feeling, like what are the things I need to be doing to feel good. And then
Right.
once I was doing all the things that makes me feel good, I started to look good. So the
Mm-hmm.
weight started to drop, but also just how I looked in terms
Absolutely.
of just my energy, my skin, all of those things were a result of focusing on like, how do I feel good? But I think the flip side is a lot of people, it's a feel good that is quite short because it's that pint of ice cream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really important of um, when we're talking about this, and I'm not going to speak for you, but is it's not that instant gratification. That's all what we always talk about. It's like what is actually on a deeper level making you feel good and for a more sustained amount of time.
Right. And yeah, you're 100% right. Right. Like and even the pint of ice cream in the moment, that instant gratification, it doesn't make you feel good. Like you feel good in the moment of eating it, but then when you eat too much of it, how do you feel after that?
Sugar
Or like
farts.
yeah, yes, sugar farts, absolutely. Like, and even think about our like holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. When you gorge yourself right in with food, it feels great in the moment because the food just tastes so good. But then what do? Right, like you go and you pass out on the couch, and it goes back to that your point of right, that's taking up energy, and you're now not able to put energy somewhere else. So in being consistent and knowing that like you have to strive for the feeling good all the time, right? And that's the other thing is like, yeah, there's this instant gratification aspect like you're talking about, but it's also quit trying to feel good in moments. Like you should be trying to feel good for extended periods of time. And that consistent work, right? It's not the instant gratification, because that instant gratification, it's right. Like if you go to drug usage, that's what heroin or opioid users are looking for, is that they shoot up, they inject, they take their drug of choice, they get their instant gratification, and then it goes down, and then they're right. That's why heroin use is called chasing the dragon, because you're chasing this feeling of euphoria and you never get it again. Whereas if you have the meditation, the workouts, and you're channeling your own dopamine, your own endorphins, all those, right, the natural drugs in your body, then you're always going to feel good, and there's nothing to chase. And when you fall off of the wagon, like you mentioned, if you fall off the wagon, when you notice how you're being, or your friends notice. I don't know if I've ever said this on the show, but I've had my friend tell me, "You didn't do yoga today, did you?" And just because of how I was being, and it's like a check of, oh yeah, you're right. Like it's personal, like it's an attack, but it's me attacking me because he's right, and shit, I didn't do my self-care. I didn't take the 55 minutes. And again, I dedicate way more than 55 minutes to my own personal care, because I need to show up. I need to show up to my corporate job. Like I take pride. And that's the other thing, is your self-care is going to, right, let's use the ripples and waves effect, right? So your self-care is going to create those ripples into the waves in everything that you do. And there's this quote that I love: how you do anything is how you do everything, right? So if you want to be a good hunter, go home and be a good husband or wife, right? If you want to be a good employee, go home and be a good parent, right? Because if you are doing one thing that way, that's how you're going to take pride in everything that you do. But in order for me to do all the things that I do, I have to be able to show up as that person. And I need to have a certain level of self-care in order to continue showing up as that person.
Yeah. I had something and I forgot it.
Oh, good. It's on you today with the losing train of thoughts, not me.
Oh man, what was it? Gosh. Yep. Nope.
So while you're thinking of that, right, I do want to talk about, right, like the things of looks, right, and this back to the beach challenge that I'm doing is, right, we have to stop, right, we have to stop with the right. So
I remembered it really quick.
Go.
One thing that when I, talking about the feel good thing is this idea of like feeling, like you said, falling off the wagon, and it's going to happen. Right. So having compassion around that, but also when you start to get in tune with, as you're doing, you are practicing discipline initially because it's hard to make changes and you have to have discipline. It's not like you're going to wake up motivated every day. And the more you do it, notice how you're feeling, right? Like notice how you feel, not just like during it, but just in general. And because then what happens is when you fall off the wagon, those are the reminders. Like, I'm going to give an example. Like, I drank a little too much this weekend on Saturday. It was in a safe place. Didn't have to drive anywhere. It was sunny out. We were outside. Like, just didn't eat enough. Like, did not make a good decision in that realm. And I felt like crap on Sunday. And I was reminded, this is why I don't do that. Like, I don't drink much. And it was like I could have and of course I probably had a few moments of beating myself up, but ultimately I used that like falling off the wagon, which is funny that I'm using it for that, but whatever it is, whether it's your diet, like how you eat, your exercise, you fall off the wagon, take note of how that feels. Right? Take note of how it feels when you are on the wagon and you're disciplined and you're doing the things that feel good for you. Notice that, because that sensation, that feeling is what will make it a lot easier to get back on.
Absolutely.
And so you fall off and you're like, this is crappy. I don't want that. So then that's where like I talked about with the Nidra, I know how it makes me feel when I'm doing it daily. And I no longer need discipline because that's just how I want to feel.
It's going to make you feel good.
That's how I want to feel.
Yeah. Who does something and is like, oh, I feel like shit. Let's keep doing it.
Well, type two fun.
But this, we're talking about type 3 fun, right? Where it's not really fun at all.
Yeah.
and that's the thing is, we think, I think we think it's type 2 fun, but it's really type 3. It goes back to that eating the thing of ice cream. Real quick, those that don't know, type 1 fun is you think it's going to be fun and it's super fun. Type 2 fun is you think it's going to be fun. It's actually miserable, but then when you look back on it, it was really a ton of fun. And then type 3 fun, it just isn't fun at all. And even you start to wonder, like, why did I even think that was going to be fun? But eating the ice cream is like, you're probably like, oh yeah, this is gonna be fun, and then you eat way too much ice cream and then you realize that wasn't fun at all. And so that's where like you have to be honest with yourself, because that's what we're doing is we continue these repetitive patterns of, oh, I don't know why I feel like shit all the time. Well, you feel like shit all the time because you keep eating ice cream. And while it's fun in the moment, right, it's not actually fun in the long run. So that's a great point that you're making there.
Just be in your body, be in your feeling, like feel, like come back to like literal sensation and feeling of how, like make that connection. That awareness allows you to make choices for your self-care of like, I know I feel better when I do this. I know I don't feel good when I do this. And then then it's a no-brainer.
I heard, so what I hear you saying is listen to your body, right? And I actually heard a different perspective, because I say that often in my yoga classes, like, hey, listen to your body. Like, or when I have pregnant women who come to my yoga class and they're like, oh, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? And my big advice to them, big advice to people with injuries is, hey, listen to your body, right? Because your body is going to tell you what's going on. And it's just whether or not, like, people think that they're listening, but they're really not. And I think this is part of that. But I heard an interesting perspective last week or something that listen to your body is actually terrible advice, because if I listen to my body, I'm going to stay in bed and I'm going to stay on the couch. And And I thought that was an interesting perspective in that sense, because yeah, I guess that's their truth, right? Like that's totally I get that. I understand that. But in the sense that I'm saying, I think the sense that you mean it, right? You haven't said listen to your body, so I'm totally putting words in your mouth. But in the sense that we're talking about it is listen to your body when it feels bad, and if your body's saying stay on the couch, maybe you need to stay on the couch. Maybe you're overworked. Maybe you need to recover. But if it says staying on the couch and then you're gaining weight and you're feeling like shit and your insulin is spiking and you're pre-diabetic, and right now it's time to stop listening to that part, right? That message that you're getting, because clearly it's not working, and start pushing yourself to go move and exercise and eat right. Mm-hmm. So I understand both perspectives, and I just thought it was interesting to hear that, because I've never even thought of it that way. Like, oh, if I listen to my body, I'm just going to sit around and do nothing. And then I, like, even just talking about it now, I'm like, oh, well, eventually your body's going to tell you to go move. Mm-hmm. Right? Because sitting around isn't good for you, and your body's going to tell you, like, hey, get up. Right? You get up, you stretch. All right, like when you've been in bed too long, you get out of bed and you're right, like you bend over just naturally to touch your toes. Right, your body is telling you something. Mm-hmm. It's saying like, hey, you're not meant to sit in an office chair for 8 hours a day.
Well, and I think it's I would say the person telling you to stay on the couch is the mind. Mm-hmm. But the mind is a lot louder than our body. Like if I'm sitting, like today I had a lot of computer work because I'm doing my taxes, and like my body does not feel good. No. And so, but it's also like, and what I'm big on is just sensations as they are. Like remove the way that you're defining them. Yep. And so what happens is if you do listen, ignore sensations, and you sit on the couch every single day and you eat unhealthy every single day, those sensations, those symptoms will start to become louder, and to the point where you can't ignore it. Your mind no longer can make excuses because they're so loud. Yep.
And so with that, I want to go back to my point that I was going to make with this. And again, right, before I piss people off, I'm going to say, right, like I see this from the way I've lived in my life and my point of view. But right there, we're in this world right now where we're quote body positivity. If you actually Google body positivity, it brings up the images are overweight or obese folks. And I'm not saying that don't love yourself or love your body for who you are, right? That shouldn't matter on your size, right? Of whether you're overweight or obese or skinny or what. But we're also shunning, or the opposite way. Like we're saying like, oh, you got to be okay being fat, where people who have 6-pack abs, right? Why isn't that body positive too? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, so that doesn't mean you're healthy, right? Having 6-pack abs does not mean that you're healthy. Being skinny doesn't mean that you're healthy, right? That's just the image that your body's giving off, right? Like you could be bulimic and have 6-packs, or skinny, right? Like a lot of people who are bulimic get ultra skinny. That doesn't mean that you're healthy. But we have to stop judging people one way or the other. And your first goal should be to be healthy, mm-hmm. right? From the inside out. And then with like this beach body, it's like an ego thing where I want my body to look how I feel, mm-hmm. right? When I right. So when I go through phases, and I've even posted on social media, right? Like when I have a six pack, like right now, I do not have a six pack. Like that is not a thing. Like I won't even show my belly right now because it's right. It's not what I want it to be, and that's okay. But when I want a six pack, it takes a lot of dedication, consistency, and energy to get there. And it's not sustainable, right? Because I like cannolis too much and I like Oreos too much. So I go through phases where like, yeah, I'm okay with how I look right now, but going to the beach, gonna have my shirt off. Like I want to show off my body and I want to look good. And there's this show, and I'm probably rambling right now, but there's this show that my wife watches, My Big Fat Fabulous Life. My wife loves reality TV, and it's this TV show about this woman who is all about just living her best life, and she's severely obese, and I think she's over 350 pounds, and it's interesting because she's actually a fitness instructor for other obese people, and like she does like dance, which great, more power to her. And if she can get people to just fucking start, I love it. But in the show, it addresses tons of right, like how her weight is actually a symptom of her eating disorder, and how her life isn't fabulous. It's the name of the show is My Big Fat Fabulous Life, but then she has to worry about being pre-diabetic and high blood pressure and, all these things that we're talking about. So it's like, well, be healthy, like focus on being healthy. And I personally don't care what you look like. I don't care who you are. Your looks don't affect my life, right? Unless they do, like my wife, and her looks don't affect my life, but her health does. Mm-hmm. And then also it goes back to, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you look good. I like what you said there. That I agree with. I think it works both ways, right? Like it's true. If you feel good, you want to get up, you want to look good. Mm-hmm. And then the same thing, if you look good, you want to, right, like you're going to feel good. You're going to be like, oh yeah. And then it's just like this never ending cycle where you're just going to keep feeling good and look good, feeling good and looking good.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. and so if my wife is not happy with the way she looks, then I support whatever it is for her to make herself feel good. Mm. And then the key going back to is she healthy? And we have to, I have a friend who I haven't talked to in a while, but he is overweight. Again, probably more so than most people. And, we have to, if they're a friend, like we should be able to say, hey, I'm worried about your health. Mm-hmm. And, being overweight has a negative impact on that, right? It puts more strain on joints. You get fat around your heart and your liver and your kidneys and your organs. So we gotta, it's not about judging. Like, I'm not judging my friend. I actually care about my friend and want him to live a long, healthy life, to be with me, right, selfishly, so I can have his friendship. So we have to stop going down this path of, like, just be happy with who you are. Well, if your weeks consist of doctor appointments and taking insulin shots and high blood pressure and all these other health issues, are you really happy with who you are when you, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah. Just a thought.
No, I think it's body positivity doesn't mean body complacency, mm-hmm. right? And like you said, like, I just hate that it, like, why that is a perfect reflection of what our society is, what I think is misaligned or misfocused, right? The fact that mm-hmm. we have to say it from the perspective of like physical body versus, like you're saying, health. Those things, there's all sorts of body types, right? And we're not talking about why we need body positivity, why we're needing to address that.
That's a great
What
point.
got us to the point that that's even a term. And this
That's a
is
really great
like,
point.
that's, we are trying to, but it's like everything is about addressing the symptoms of a lot of toxicity that exists at the root. And it's, you know, I think, again, compassion, but there's also a point of, pun intended, like, are we sugarcoating the reality? And just like you're saying, the health that is behind it, or the depression that maybe got you to the point of that. And then we're afraid to say something because we want to be a supportive friend or a supportive partner. And then how weird is it to say to someone, you're unhappy, but you should have body positivity.
Right.
It's like, well,
Yeah.
what came first? You know, maybe there's something that came before the lack of body positivity.
Yep.
And on both sides, whether that's with anorexia, you know, with eating disorders that can pan out on two different directions.
Yep.
And we just, again, I feel like it's an example of where we don't know how to work with mental health. And so we just address the symptoms of it all on everything.
And then it goes back to mental health is definitely like the problem, but we also have to make sure we're not treating mental health as the symptom, because, like, again, we've talked about medication serves its point, and if you need those medicines, right, I don't think we have to keep saying this, but we're going to, because people might jump around to different episodes, right? Medication serves its purpose, and if you need antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds to help start and begin the battle and even maintain it to greater mental health, then please, by all means, do that. But going back to, right, making sure we link this to our self-care talk is, if you are taking care of yourself, that is meaning you're taking care of your mental health, and exercise is a huge portion of that. Getting your body to release those endorphins, the dopamine, to do the things that your body is supposed to do, is going to help with your mental health. Right? And so exactly to what you were just saying is, the symptom, we're so worried about treating the symptom, but really it goes back to being selfish. And I use that word intentionally, right? We have to be selfish, right? We have to, right? It's the put your oxygen mask on first before helping someone else, right? On the airplane. If you've never flown, hopefully everyone's flown, but if you've never flown, when you get on a plane, there's emergency instructions, and if the oxygen mask dropped from the ceiling, you're supposed to put your oxygen mask on first. That's selfish, and that's okay, right? Because you being selfish and you getting oxygen, allowing yourself to breathe, will allow you to help someone else. And then you taking care of your mental health. Like, I have depression. I deal with depression. I have tons of family in my family that deal with depression, and I know in my depressed state, I am no good for anyone. Right? So, and I know what I have to do to stay out of that. And sometimes I do it, and sometimes I don't. And you actually made a comment to me once, Bree, about how I don't know what you said exactly, but you said something about how when I fall off the wagon, right, when I don't do something, And then I'm like, yep, guess what? You get to do it again tomorrow. Right? Like you get to try again tomorrow. And that's what I've learned is that quit living in the past. Like quit, right? And that's the point of this. I'm going to pull out the beach body thing again, right? That's the point of this is to, I actually did that last one, so I got to mark that off. But that's the point of this is I know that there's a day I'm going to have to post. I'm going to have to do a video online to post this so people see what it is if they don't watch the YouTube. The point is that seeing that I'm going to miss and then being okay with that and being okay with that I missed. But the point is that I can't miss every day. Right. And I don't know when it's going to be, but I'm going to miss and I'm going to drop the ball, maybe multiple times, probably multiple times. And I have to say, I fucked up. I didn't do it. And then guess what? That's the other reason I wrote all these out is that because, yeah, I didn't do them here, but I guess what? I have another chance at life. I have another chance to do what I was supposed to do yesterday, today. And my goal and everyone's goal should just be to have more days where you're doing that good thing versus eating the ice cream.
Yeah. I mean, it's a perfect example. I talk a lot about how I do yoga nidra every day and how that's important to me and discipline at first, but yeah, Friday when I had Hunter Ed, I didn't do it. And
how'd you feel?
Could I have woken up earlier and done it? But sleep is also important to me. And that day I decided I had gone to bed a lot later the night before than I wanted. And so could I have set my alarm for 5:30 and did my nidra? Absolutely. But I didn't, and it's like, so what you're saying is I can live in the past and I can continue to be stressed about something that I didn't do or how I failed, causing more mental harm, right? Like, or I can just decide like, okay, I'm going to make sure I do it the next day, and it's clearing this every single day. It's clearing the slate. It's standing in nothing. That's where all possibility and opportunity exists. And, what you're saying with putting the oxygen mask on, and so often we use things outside of us as a crutch for our lack of self-care. And we use...
Do you have an example?
We use work, we use kids, we use a lot of... But if that's not there, you're going to use something else, right? So if it's not, I'm working, I'm just working so much I don't have time for that. And what you said, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so if I'm not working a lot, all of a sudden I'm gonna blame something else. And it's not to blame yourself and to beat yourself up, but it's if you aren't aware of the reason that things are going a certain way, you can't ever you can't make the changes. And so accountability for yourself is there's no one else that's responsible for your actions and the way that you perceive the things that come your way. You are the only person who can determine what any of those things mean, right? And that also means you have the power to change your actions, change the way you perceive things coming at you as just happening. Because again, you're going to blame something else. You can say it's my kids, and I'm not downplaying. I don't have children, so I am not downplaying the amount of effort it takes to raise children. But part of through my process of even just relationships with, that I've been in, part of what I look for in a partner is someone who's willing to do the work, because I know once we have kids, it will take more effort. But it doesn't mean I don't want to go for my 3-hour run, or I don't want to go backpacking or camping.
Right.
And if someone is going to blame their job or blame finances or this or blame all these other things for not doing stuff with their kids, like, again, they're always going to have someone else to blame, versus just being like, no, I'm going to put the effort. It's going to be a little bit harder, but
Yep.
like, it's worth it.
Yep. Yeah. And to your point, those reasons, they're valid, right? Like, let's not take that from someone, right? Like, having kids is hard, right? That is a valid reason, but it's still a reason. And it's right. Like, yeah, you have kids, and that's going to take up time in your life to take care of them, feed them, nourish them, right? Like, teach them the ways of life. But again, who are you being? Who are you showing up as in those moments when you don't take care of yourself? Right? When you don't have your own oxygen mask on, who are you being for those kids? So while your reasons, right, are valid, they're also bullshit, right? Because they shouldn't stop you from, and they do, right? Like, this isn't me preaching, getting all preachy, right? Like, I've said this before, right? When I'm saying something in my yoga class, I'm saying it for me, and I'm just talking out loud, and it's the same thing. Like, I do that. Like, I have valid reasons, right? Like, oh, it's late. I don't want to work out. I'm tired. I worked all day. My mental health doesn't care, right? My mental health doesn't give a shit that I'm tired, right? Like, your sleep, your way of being doesn't care that you had Hunter Ed. You missed Yoga Nidra. You fucked up. Cool. Now what? Quit dwelling on it, first off, right? Like, again, quit making your mental health worse. And that's the other thing, is it doesn't stack, right? Like, these things don't stack, right? Like, you missed Yoga Nidra the other day right, because you had this Hunter Ed thing. That doesn't mean you have to do more Yoga Nidra. You know? You just have to do Yoga Nidra. And it's the same thing with this 45-day beach body challenge that I'm doing, is nothing stacks. You have to do 30 minutes plus of working out. And if you don't do it, you don't have to do 30 plus minutes plus 30 plus minutes. You just have to do 30 plus minutes the next day, because that last day is gone. It's over. You did or didn't do it. And that's the thing, is, the reasons or the results, they're always there. They're always just going to be, we add too much personal, we take it too personal, in the sense of, especially like when we don't do it, right? Like with this Yoga Nidra, it's a perfect example, just because, right, like, you missed it, right? Like, you could beat yourself up, you could take it personal. But what about when you do Yoga Nidra? Are you ever like, yeah, I did Yoga Nidra today? And right, maybe that's how it started, but now it's just, again, part of your day. And right, like, it's just an event in time to help you, right? It's a tool to help you. It's an event in time. And we, like, assigning meaning one way or the other is like, we just need to stop it, right? Like, when I work out, I'm not like, yay, I worked out today, right? Unless I haven't worked out in a really long time. And I'm like, yay, I fucking did it, right? Just fucking start. But it's just, yay, I worked out today. Next, like, now, and that's why I did put this do something you enjoy on there, because also how often are we robbing ourselves of, right? Like, working out, I enjoy working out some days, right? Maybe it depends on what you see as a workout. Me and my friend Jason had a discussion. You'll love this. I'll ask you, what do you think it is? But so, do you think climbing is working out? Rock climbing. So, like, you get off work Thursday night, you go to the gym, you go to the rock gym, and you climb. Is that a workout?
Yeah.
It is? That's funny. That's what he says. I say it's not a workout.
Yeah.
But
I was in, like, my best shape when I was climbing at the gym regularly. I'm not a gym climber, but I I knew my fitness was so much, like, I rather climb outside, but my fitness was so much better when I gym climbed regularly.
Yes. That's training. I don't see it as a workout though.
So
And
what's a
again, that's just
workout
me.
versus training? How would you define each of those?
Like a workout is like, so like training is like you're training for something.
But I wasn't like
you're-
training for, I didn't have any climbing objectives. I just climbed for fun.
you didn't, but you did, right? You wanted to be able to climb confidently outdoors. And so like you're saying, like you just said it, like, hey, I was better at climbing outdoors when I climbed inside.
Yeah.
And
But I was
where,
also in my
like-
best shape. Like I had I was in my best fitness just in general.
Right.
So whether I climbed
Right.
outside or not, like if I wasn't
Right.
an outdoor climber, I would still be. But a workout, then I never work out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to me, like a workout is like it was funny, like, cause I would climb at Evo.
Yeah.
And then I would climb. We used to shut down the gym. I used to get there at like 6:00 in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
We used to climb until like 9, and then I'd go upstairs and lift weights
Yeah.
for an hour. And Jason, my buddy, he's like, "Why are you going to lift weights? You just had your workout." I'm like, "No, I didn't." And again, right, like it's just my thought
Yeah.
pattern, right? And like to each their own, right? Like it's just silly. Like I just wanted to get your perspective on it.
Yeah.
But to me, it wasn't a workout. Like, yeah, like my arms would get pumped. I would grow. I would get better at climbing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And my heart rate would increase. So by all elements, right, it technically is a workout.
Yeah.
But to me, it wasn't like no, I still had to go lift weights.
Yeah.
Because to me, lifting weights was going to make me a better climber too. Right? Climbing is going to make
So then
you,
that
like,
would be
strength is-
training. You just proved yourself
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so
you're
your
right.
weightlifting was training, not a workout.
Right. Yes. You're so right. Oh man.
You just
See,
set
I'm
yourself
a walking,
up.
I'm a walking contradiction.
No, but I think what's important to see there, like what I love, what I take away from it is like it's back to that, like maybe what you need to do to start quote unquote working out is doing something that you enjoy that actually gets
Right.
you to do it. So maybe your workout for 30 plus minutes starts as going and playing basketball with friends, or maybe it's going for a hike, right? Like,
Bam, and you get across two things right off the list.
you know, and that's that. It doesn't have to look like, especially when you're starting back up or you're trying to ramp up, like lower the barrier to success.
Yep. Yeah, quit trying to be David Goggins.
I
like,
know.
right? Like you just went from the couch, like just like you said, go play basketball, go do something.
Yeah.
Right, go do jujitsu. Like it's funny. This is another one, right? That just based off this whole contradictory conversation, I don't think jujitsu is a workout. I am literally drenched in sweat by the end of jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
Like my gi is drenched, soaking wet. Like it is the ultimate workout. My whoop strap definitely defines it as a workout. Right. By all intents and purposes, it is a workout, but I'm still like, nope, I gotta go lift weights.
So what is jiu-jitsu then?
It's something I enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something and that's how I saw rock climbing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so and that's what it was. It's just something I enjoy doing.
Do you enjoy
You know,
lifting
like
weights? Yeah.
I enjoy how I feel after I'm done lifting weights.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I enjoy lifting weights.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
Right, but it's like I always have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right, whether I'm in the mood or not. That goes back to that discipline, that self-care, because I know how I'm going to feel if I don't.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the same with yoga. Like I've been trying to deliver this message, right? Like you've really helped me define this message a bit. In yoga is, I don't do yoga because I love yoga, but then I'm like, fuck, no, I do love yoga because I know the outcome. But I don't I'm not like yoga, yippee. I'm like yoga. It's going to keep my body and mind right for all these other amazing things I love to do. And that's why I love yoga. So like, it's like a mixed message. Like I don't love yoga. Like I'm not like, yes, I get to, right? Like do like 10 hours of yoga today. That doesn't sound like a fun day to me. Right. But I'm like, yeah, I get to do yoga today because I'm going to feel amazing when I go to jiu-jitsu. Or I'm going to feel amazing at work. I'm going to feel amazing when I'm, hanging out with my wife and we're dealing with life, paying bills, right? Like, so that's why I love yoga. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm an outdoor cat, so like indoor activities are hard for me. But yoga, yeah, I mean, it's like, I do definitely and I also like studying it. There's a lot in there in terms of yoga, but
There is a lot in yoga because there's so much to it. Yoga
Yeah.
is right. Like you start incorporating your yamas and niyamas and your mental health and your physical health and right when I think of yoga, I think of Ashtanga, I think of the 8 limbs and your breath and your higher being.
Yeah, I think why it's like the spiritual aspect of it for me. Like the physical is just a vessel for everything else. I mean, I do physically it is helpful again with just all the other activities I do. But I also believe that there's a lot of physical ailments or things happening in our body that are a result of that's like blocked energy or that is very much mental or spiritual, transpiring inside of the body. And so for me, yoga isn't the physical is just a added benefit.
That makes sense.
But how I got into it was like, this is the first time I was thinking about only myself.
Yeah.
Like when I first started doing it in New York, it was like, wow, this is like an hour. Back then it was 90 minutes. And it's like, it's an hour and a half where the only thing I'm thinking about is my body and me.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Okay.
I hate hour-long yoga classes.
Oh my gosh.
Fuck, I hate teaching. I teach 1 hour-long yoga class. I teach 3 classes a week, and I teach one, and I'm air quoting, 1 hour long, and that's technically an hour long, but it's really not. I still even push it beyond an hour. But it's my Friday morning classes, and I try to restrict it to the hour because I know people got to get to work, but I still always go over.
Yeah.
But it's so, right. One, as a yoga teacher, I can't teach you effective, efficient yoga for your day in an hour.
Yeah.
Like by the time I get you warmed up, it's time to cool you down, and there's nothing in between.
Yeah.
And then, right, like it goes back to, right, people, right, this touches on a few things, but like why people don't do yoga or why people don't go to a 90-minute yoga class.
I don't have enough time.
Right. But, you just didn't make enough time for yourself to go to that 90-minute. And, I'd go if it was, I see 45-minute yoga classes and I cringe. I have some good friends who teach 45-minute yoga classes.
I've taught them.
And I'm like, oh my God, what are you like? What is wrong with you? Like that's craziness to think that I can get you warmed up and cool down in 45 minutes. And then Shavasana.
But it's because Western, we've made it a workout. It's not yoga.
Yeah.
It isn't yoga.
It isn't. We do. That is one of the American way things is, right, we've turned it into this workout. We've turned it into this thing that we just gotta, and it leads me back to hot yoga. Like let's make it really fucking hot so I can get more of a workout in. right? So I can heat up my muscles faster, and versus dedicating the time that it takes to actually get there.
Well, because we're saying sweat is the measurement of effort. Busyness is the measurement of success.
Yeah.
Why do we have processed food? Right? Like everything is just, well, in one of my favorite trilogy books, Neither Wolf Nor Dog, Kent Nurburn, there's like 3 of them. I've talked about them before, but it's, they go to eat. So it's some indigenous tribes. I think it's a Lakota elder, and a white guy is the one who's wrote the books, and he's with I think 2 Indians, and they're about to eat, and it's just like a bologna sandwich. Okay.
Yeah.
And the author, the white guy, like goes and just starts eating it. And the Lakota elder goes, "You have no respect for anything. Like, you white people just like want to get through things, you know?" And cause it's like every time before they eat, they like have a moment with their food, like blessing, like everything, the sacrifice that it made, like all of this. But it's just such a great metaphor for the way that, I guess we would say, westernized culture has developed of like mindlessness.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it
versus
is.
Versus mindfulness.
Exactly.
Right.
Right. Everything we do is like, okay, now we've got yoga and we just want it to be over faster. So I can check the box that I did it versus like, what is this actually? I mean, that's coming back to like, how do you feel? What is important? How are you prioritizing?
Yep.
And anything that you want to do fast, I'd question yourself. How important is it?
Do you really want to do it? Yep.
I mean, yeah, there's times where it's like, I would say rather you sit and meditate for 5 minutes than nothing at all. But I don't know. It's something to look at personally.
And not only that, like to boil water, it takes time. You can't speed that up, right? Like, I mean, you can speed it up by getting the water hotter faster, but for me, lifting weights takes a certain amount of time. Like, I could go down there and get it over in 30 minutes, but I don't get the benefits of the time, whatever time that it takes, right? It's usually my weightlifting sessions are like an hour to hour and 15 minutes. And the water has to boil, right? Like, I can't throw the macaroni into the pot of just hot water.
I was going to say, I can't make a good pour over coffee with
right
with half boiled water.
I don't know how you do your coffee. Yeah, right. Yeah, and I don't know how you do your coffee, but and I don't do this at all. I have a Keurig. I literally put a fucking pot in, hit the button, I make my coffee. But I know people take coffee very seriously. And you get your water. I don't know if this is you or not, but people measure the temperature of their water. Right? It's not about like 200 degrees. It's about 202 degrees. And I don't know if that's right. I'm just making shit up. Right. Or if it's like 211 versus 212. And then that's the perfect temperature. And then there's a certain amount of grams of coffee grinds that has to be used for that perfect cup of coffee. And so it's very much like baking, right? Like, it's going to, like, you have to take the ingredients, you have to use them in order, and right, like, just because you put the ingredients together to make a cake and you put it in a bowl and you throw it in a pan, you know what? Fuck it. I just want cake. I'm not going to put it in the oven. Like, no, that doesn't, just because you want it to be cake doesn't mean it's cake. Right? Like, it still takes the time that it takes, right? You still have to boil the water. You still have to, right? My workouts are an hour to hour and 15 minutes. And no matter how fast I want them to go by, they still take, and usually what's really funny is when I want them to go by faster, they usually take longer because I procrastinate more during like offsets. And I'm like, I just want this to be over. And so or when we want the water to boil faster, what do? We stare at the pot.
Lift it up,
And
lift it
like,
up. Oh,
right,
it's
yeah.
like, oh, every time
and,
you do
and
that, it's taking longer.
yeah, and you're wasting energy, right? You're wasting energy to try to speed something up and do something that isn't. So when you're taking this workout, this yoga class, this thing, and you're not giving it the time that it needs, like that's you're paying for that. There is a price to pay. Like and sometimes the price is shitty coffee. Sometimes the price is, right, like pasta that's not cooked all the way. In this case, it's your mental health, who you showing up as is not the person you say you're showing up as.
It's quality,
And that's
quality
the
of
other thing.
life.
Yeah.
What do you want your experience to be?
Right.
Cook it all the way.
Yeah. Do you want your cake to be a puddle of uncooked bullshit, or
It's gonna taste
But my
better. It's
kids-
gonna taste better when you put the time into it.
right?
Right?
And you can't say, right, like let's apply. I'm really digging this analogies that we brought it up, but like let's say, right, like, oh, my kids, because your fucking kids are there doesn't mean that puddle of uncooked mush is still a cake. Like, yeah, you still have to put it in the oven and it still has to cook whether you have kids or not. Right, whether you have work or not, if you want a cake, you have to actually bake the cake for the time that it takes. If you want to boil the water, you have to boil the water, whether you have kids or not. Right, so quit using your kids, right? Your kids deserve better, first off. So quit using them as a fucking excuse, right? And like quit setting the example, right? Like, and you're also teaching the future generations too. That's the other thing, is I don't know that we understand the impact that we make in these small decisions, right? It's the small decision, right? Like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to work out today because my kids. Add whatever in there, track meet, right? Like, it could be something really good for your kids. Like, I'm not saying that your kids are these little assholes. Sometimes they probably are, but like, right, that are just consuming your time. But know that you're teaching your kid, oh, well, I don't have to do this thing that's really important. I don't have to let the cake fully. Imagine if you gave your kid, well, they'd probably like it because they like looking at the spatula, but imagine if you gave your kid a cake that wasn't baked, right? And here it's a cake, right? You're teaching them that this is this thing that's not a cake, that it's a cake. And they don't get the enjoyment of actually eating the cake. And then they learn, oh, you know what? I don't have to take care of myself because the kids.
What if they said that to you?
Right.
Oh, I'm not going to do this because my parents. Well, it does happen, right? But I think it's also, it's that like, it's like exactly what you're saying. This is what you're teaching them. And I think, like, think about times that you've been blamed for something and you're like, what? Like, you've been the scapegoat for someone else.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good.
No.
And so if you're using the people who are most important to you as scapegoats, who is that showing up? What does that say?
Yep.
Like, take responsibility.
That brings up so many emotions for me.
Not today.
No.
We're at
my God.
the timekeeper.
Mark.
I know.
Oh, gosh. Just because, like, I got to talk about it. I brought it up, but like, you're so right. Like, in this life, like, we make up, or we use these scapegoats that are right, like, and like, we don't want to hold ourselves accountable. And you said something earlier, right? Like, we want to be supportive to our friends, and I go back to the saying of, right, empathy is not supposed to ease discomfort. Right? Like, being a supportive friend sometimes, right, might mean telling your friend that they're fat. And knowing that, hey, you're fat and I love you and I want you to be healthy, so I need you to work out and I need your mental health better. And it's sad that in our society we've taken that accountability aspect away. Right? Like, oh, we have to be so nice to ourselves, like, and even to yourself, like, I'm overweight, like looking in the mirror and be like, I'm overweight. again, quit being personal about it, right? Quit taking it so personal. Yes, I'm overweight. No, it's not me, right? Like, I'm too thin, but I'm overweight, and I'm going to take action on that. And that's it. It's the end of the story, right? I need to hold myself accountable, and instead of saying, right, like, and this is an extreme, stupid example that gets used often, but, right, I'm overweight, so it's McDonald's fault, right? I hate using that example, but I'm using it, and, right, like, no, like, it's not their fault. And this goes back to so many other things with, like, I'm trying to think of an example.
Well, I felt like crap on Sunday.
Yeah.
Not because my friends, not because it was sunny and I wanted to be outside. It's because I made the decisions that I made. I made the choice. No one forced anything. Like,
Right.
and I acknowledge that. And I could say, oh, whatever, I'll just do that again today. Well, I already messed up, so who cares? No, right? Like, take responsibility.
Let's continue this journey of feeling like shit.
Yeah, like, take responsibility. Don't beat yourself up, but acknowledge it. So again, that you can, because like you said, you have a new day. As long as you wake up, you have a new day to make new choices that have nothing to do with the day before.
Yeah. And it's only you, right? Like, we can blame all these outsides, the kids, that, right? Like, we've talked about that, right? We can blame all these things, but really it's you. That's it. You said this earlier, right? You're the only one who's accountable. I've shared this with guns, right? You're the only one who's responsible for protecting you. Everyone thinks that the government can protect you, right? Like, you're the only one in any situation, right? Like, whether it's protection, whether it's safety, whether it's accountability, right? Like, you're the only one who can be responsible for yourself. And we have to, we can't lose that, right? We have to take control of that. And my wife, so I've read this book years ago, and I've actually reread it multiple times. I don't even know how many times I've read it, but A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Have you read it?
I haven't, but I know I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah. So he's a Holocaust survivor, and he wrote about his time in Auschwitz, and I think he was in another internment camp, concentration camp, whatever you want to call it. During he talks about the power of the mind, and right, and like being accountable for yourself, and in this terrible situation, right? He was in this awful, right? Probably, I think we could all agree that probably one of the worst situations you could ever want to be in your life is to be at Auschwitz. And he continued to respond in the way that he needed to survive, right? Where other people woke up with no will to live. And that's what he goes into, is, right, your will. And it's that man's search for meaning, like the meaning of life. We talked about that in our Why episode, that people would wake up and they call it running the fence. They would run directly into the electric fence to kill themselves. Or people would die from starvation because they just would give up. Versus, right, he was in the same situation, the same shitty situation, and he chose to make decisions to get himself through it. And right, so it doesn't, and I use that as the extreme example, because no matter what your situation is, whether you're in a concentration camp watching all of your friends get gassed and burned alive, and running into electric fences, or getting shot by the SS soldiers, to, right, like, your terrible life of having to wake up in your house in Boulder looking at the foothills, and there's clouds in the sky, and now you don't want to go for a run because it's cold outside. Like, no, like, or your kids are being assholes, whatever that is, right? Like, it's your decision. You can't blame anything.
The only person who creates your reality is you. You create your reality. Nobody else. Everything else is independent of you.
100%. Yeah. We might not think it is. This is a past selves thing.
Yeah.
But like, if you have codependency issues, you might not think that they're independent or you're independent of them. But
Well, and it's, I
again,
mean,
that's
it's complicated too, because it's like we're all one, right? Like here we
Mm-hmm.
are. Like the way that what I say about this other person is basically if I'm saying F this person, I'm saying F to myself, right? So, but your reality
So
is independent of anyone else's reality. You will never live someone else's reality.
100%.
So you are your reality is independent, and you are the only person responsible for that reality.
Absolutely. And, just to the tune of independence, and then we can close out, is my, so Jessica and I, right, we see a marriage counselor and people are like, oh, what's wrong with your marriage? Nothing. That's exactly why we see marriage counselor, because we are actually working on the things and like we've gotten to the point where nothing's wrong, versus just letting it stew and brew. But in seeing a counselor and working, doing the work and getting, the tools to help ourselves is what we realize, right? Like, so you have independence, you have codependence, but then you have interdependence. And interdependence is, I believe, what you're saying, right? And that's how we've found a great life, is through interdependence. And interdependence is I'm independent, she's independent, I do my things, she does her things, with both of us keeping in mind that we are working towards something together and towards something better. And also knowing, like, I like jiu-jitsu, she doesn't. She likes watching TV, right? Like, this is one example. Like, sometimes watching TV, yeah, that's your way to check out and do something you enjoy. And right, she likes watching her reality TV. I don't. And we had a friend just recently say, like, she was like, she's like, I've been meaning to tell you that I love yours and Jessica's relationship because you guys are able to find passion in your own things, but yet you still work so great together. And that's interdependence. And to your point, right, like, yeah, we're all one, but we're also independent, right? So it's important for me to go out and hunt and do jiu-jitsu and take care of myself so that everyone else can do their thing too. And then we can make this world a better place.
Yeah, love it.
All right, journal prompt. Unless you got anything else to say.
No, always something to say, but once
we
we
can keep going.
once we get that
let's
2-hour
make this
mark.
Let's make this our first 4-hour episode.
No, I can't. Did you just hear me say all the taxes I need to work on? I also have a meeting for one of my retreats, so.
Oh, cool.
The llamas.
Oh, fun llama retreat.
Oh yeah.
I followed them on Instagram. They're fun.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Anyway, I digress. Journal prompt. So, this might be really hard for you. Maybe you haven't picked up your journal. Maybe you've listened to every episode of The Hunter and the Hippie. And every episode, you're just like, oh yeah, no, I'll get to the journal later. Or you're like, I don't have a journal, or oh, I'm not picking up my phone, or oh, I'm not writing about that. Right? You're doing yourself a disservice. Start now. Grab your fucking journal. Just fucking start. That's it. Right? This is part of self-care. Right? Self-care is writing down your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, getting them out. Right? It's your way. It is your non-judgmental way of telling someone or something everything that is going on in your head. Right? I don't care if you're writing in complete sentences. I don't care if you're just writing one words, ideas. I don't care if you're writing in capitals or whatever, right? Like, just write. It is, right? If you, and don't say, again, I go back to this, don't say, Alan, I did it for 3 days and it's not working. Do it for 45 days. Come on, join me. Okay? In your journal prompt, join me. Say, I'm going to join Alan's Back to the Beach challenge, right? I'm going to commit to 55 minutes of time that maybe I didn't do outside of this, as well as eating better and taking a photo of myself daily. And that's it. And you're just committing to consistency. And write about that. and write about why it's important to take care of yourself. Write about who you need to take care of yourself for. So first off, you need to take care of yourself for you. That should be like the number one. But do you have children? Do you have dogs? Do you have friends? Do you have, coworkers? Right? Just start writing about what self-care is going to look like for you. And just fucking start. Right? Like, quit with I'll wait till next week. It's Tuesday tomorrow. Right? Well, shit. When we release this, it's going to be a Wednesday. It's today's Monday. But, right, like, we'll release this on a Wednesday. You're going to listen to it and you'll be like, I'll wait till Sunday of next week, or I'll wait till Monday of next week. No. If you're listening to it first thing in the morning on Wednesday, once it's over, grab your fucking journal, write it down, and then go do something for self-care. And I don't care what it looks like. Just go do something for self-care and write about it then, right? After you do it, write about how you're feeling to bring Bree's points back into this. Write about those sensations, right? Be it good or bad, right? When I sat on the couch for the last 7 days and my back hurts, write about that sensation. Or I didn't sit on the couch. I went and exercised, and write about those sensations of feeling good. Use this as an outlet, and use this as something that you get to go back and reflect on too, right? That's also part of self-care, is reflection and going back and saying, what did I say a year ago? And then compare, right? Compare in the sense of, right, reflection, not to live in the comparison moment, but say, hey, I said this a year ago, and now I'm completely different, and I'm doing those things, and those things help me, or I haven't changed in a year, right? So if you haven't changed in a year, then be like, okay, today's the day. I'm just going to fucking start. Mm-hmm. But don't live in the moment. Quit with I haven't changed in a year, and I'm just going to sit on the couch and eat more ice cream, right? Like that, you've already tried that. It's not working. So use your journal as a tool. It's really important. And if you go to a counselor for yourself, for your marriage, for friendships, they're going to tell you to write shit down. So this journal is really important. Maybe you're like Bree. Maybe you have like 17 journals where you have a dream journal, and you have, right, just, I don't care what it looks like. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Just do it. Just fucking start.
Awesome.
Bree, it was so amazing talking to you, as always.
We really went for it.
We did.
Amazing.
All right.
All right. Until next time.
Yep. Have a good night.
If you want to follow us and our adventures, you can find both of us on Instagram. I'm at Bree Allison. That's BreAllison.
And I am at The Life of Alan Tatone, _ between each word. To check out our offerings, yoga, one-on-one trainings, workshops, retreats, and a recorded library, you can find the info on our website, thehunterandthehippie.com.
If you have questions for the podcast, about the podcast, feedback, suggestions, or just want to say hi, or find ways to work with us, our email is thehunterandthehippie@gmail.com. And don't worry, all of this will be in our show notes.
Thanks for tuning in.
Hopefully you weren't tuned out.
To the Hunter and the Hippie podcast.